Tyrannosaurs. Tyrannosaurs were one of the most powerful and iconic families of carnivorous dinosaurs to ever live. They evolved relatively late in the Mesozoic era, primarily dominating the northern hemisphere during the late Cretaceous, about 80 to 66 million years ago. The most famous member of this group is Tyrannosaurus rex, a predator that could reach over 40 feet in length and weigh up to 9 tons. But T. rex was not alone. Other important tyrannosaurs include Albertosaurus, Daspletosaurus, Gorgosaurus, and Tarbosaurus. These species varied in size but shared core anatomical traits: massive skulls, thick necks, deep-set eyes, powerful jaws filled with banana-shaped serrated teeth, and extremely short but muscular forelimbs with 2-fingered hands. One of the defining features of tyrannosaurs was their advanced sensory and neurological systems. Studies of fossilized brain cases show they had enlarged olfactory bulbs and optic nerves, suggesting excellent smell and vision. Despite their small arms, the biomechanics of their skulls and legs indicate they were capable of delivering bone-crushing bites and short bursts of surprising speed for such large animals. Tyrannosaurs likely evolved from much smaller, faster ancestors during the Middle Jurassic and rose to dominance as other large predators, like the Allosaurs, faded. Dromaeosaurs, raptors. Dromaeosaurs, commonly known as raptors, were a family of small to medium-sized feathered predatory dinosaurs known for their agility, intelligence, and distinctive weaponry. They belong to the clade Dromaeosauridae, which is closely related to birds, and are part of a broader group of advanced theropods called Paravians. Raptors lived from the Middle Jurassic through the end of the Cretaceous period, with fossils found across North America, Asia, and Europe. Members of this family include Velociraptor, Deinonychus, Utahraptor, and Microraptor. While popular culture often exaggerates their size and behavior, real raptors were still formidable predators. They typically had long, stiff tails used for balance, slender bodies built for speed, and powerful hind limbs equipped with a retractable, sickle-shaped claw on the second toe of each foot. This claw was likely used to pin or slash prey, possibly in coordinated attacks. Dromaeosaurs were covered in feathers, and many species had wing-like structures on their arms. Some, like Microraptor, even had flight feathers on their legs and may have been capable of gliding. Their anatomy and fossil record provides some of the clearest evidence of the evolutionary transition from non-avian dinosaurs to birds. Sauropods. Sauropods were a group of enormous four-legged herbivorous dinosaurs known for their long necks, whip-like tails, and massive columnar limbs. They belonged to the clade Sauropoda, which emerged during the late Triassic and thrived well into the Cretaceous period. Sauropods were among the largest terrestrial animals to ever exist, with some species exceeding 100 feet in length and weighing over 70 tons. Notable genera include Apatosaurus, Diplodocus, Brachiosaurus, Camarasaurus, Argentinosaurus, and Patagodon. While different sauropods varied in shape and size, they shared core characteristics: elongated neck vertebrae that allowed them to feed from tall trees or across wide horizontal ranges, small, lightweight skulls, and nostrils placed high on their heads. Their tails may have been used for defense, balance, or even sound production through whip-like motion. Their skeletons were adapted for gigantism. Many bones had internal air sacs, similar to birds, that reduced weight and helped with respiration. Unlike other large animals, sauropods didn't chew food thoroughly. Instead, they swallowed it whole and relied on large digestive systems to process tough plant material over time. Fossilized trackways indicate they lived in herds and may have migrated seasonally. Nesting sites with clutches of eggs suggest they laid many offspring at once, likely relying on numbers for survival rather than parental care. Ceratopsians. Ceratopsians were a family of herbivorous, beaked dinosaurs known for their elaborate facial horns and large, frilled skulls. They belonged to the clade Ceratopsidae and appeared during the late Jurassic, becoming especially diverse and widespread in the late Cretaceous. The most iconic member is Triceratops, which had 3 facial horns, 2 above the eyes and 1 on the nose, and a massive bony frill extending from the back of the skull. Other well-known ceratopsians include Stegosaurus, Centrosaurus, Pachycephalosaurs, and Chasmosaurus. These species varied in size and ornamentation, with some displaying large spiked frills and others having shorter, rounded frills or elaborate nasal structures. Their skulls were some of the largest and most complex among dinosaurs, often taking up over a third of their total body length. The purpose of their frills and horns is still debated. They may have served for defense, species recognition, sexual display, or even thermoregulation. Fossil evidence suggests that many species lived and traveled in herds. The diversity in horn and frill structure among species points to rapid evolutionary changes driven by both natural and sexual selection. Hadrosaurs, duck-billed dinosaurs. Hadrosaurs were large, herbivorous dinosaurs known for their flat, duck-like snouts and complex chewing systems. They belong to the clade Hadrosauridae, which became one of the most dominant and widespread dinosaur families of the late Cretaceous. There are two main subgroups of hadrosaurs: Sauropods, which either had solid crests or no crests, and Lambeosaurans, which had hollow, elaborate crests extending from the skull. Species like Edmontosaurus had flat skulls with no crest, while Parasaurolophus had a long, backward-curving tube-shaped crest, and Corythosaurus featured a helmet-like structure. These crests were not just decorative. In Lambeosaurans, they likely acted as resonating chambers for vocal communication, perhaps to signal between individuals or warn of danger. Hadrosaurs possessed one of the most advanced chewing systems among non-avian dinosaurs. Their jaws held hundreds of tightly packed teeth that formed continuous grinding surfaces, similar to the molars of mammals. These teeth were constantly replaced, allowing them to handle coarse vegetation over a lifetime. They could chew in a back-and-forth motion rather than just up and down, which was rare among dinosaurs. Most hadrosaurs could walk both bipedally and quadrupedally, shifting between two-legged and four-legged movement depending on their speed and activity. Their social behavior, herd structures, and anatomical versatility made hadrosaurs one of the most ecologically important herbivorous dinosaur families of the Mesozoic. Ankylosaurs. Ankylosaurs were heavily armored, quadrupedal herbivores best known for their bony plates and clubbed tails. They belong to the clade Ankylosauria, which is divided into two main families: Ankylosauridae, which includes species with tail clubs, and Nodosauridae, which lacked clubs but had more pronounced shoulder spikes and narrower skulls. Ankylosaurs lived from the Middle Jurassic through the Late Cretaceous and were found on multiple continents. The defining feature of ankylosaurs was their body armor. This consisted of osteoderms, bone plates embedded in the skin, covering the back, neck, and even eyelids in some species. These plates formed an impenetrable shield against predators. In Ankylosaurus, the tail ended in a massive bone club made from fused vertebrae and osteoderms, capable of delivering crushing blows. Their skulls were low and broad, with a wide beak for cropping vegetation. Ankylosaurs had small leaf-shaped teeth arranged in simple rows, suggesting they fed on low-lying plants like ferns and cycads. They had large digestive tracts to ferment tough plant matter, compensating for their limited oral processing ability. Their limbs were short and powerful, supporting a low center of gravity ideal for stability rather than speed. Ankylosaurs are generally believed to have been solitary or lived in small groups. Their armor and tail weaponry made them some of the most extreme examples of passive protection in the animal kingdom. Stegosaurs. Stegosaurs were an earlier group of four-legged herbivorous dinosaurs known for their distinctive double rows of bony plates along the back and spikes on the tail. They belonged to the family Stegosauridae, which flourished during the late Jurassic period. Fossils have been found in North America, Europe, Africa, and Asia. Stegosaurs were part of a larger clade called Thyreophora, which also includes ankylosaurs, meaning both groups evolved armor independently. The best-known species is Stegosaurus, which could grow up to 30 feet long. Its back plates were tall, flat, and diamond-shaped, arranged in alternating rows. These plates were not solid bone but had internal channels, suggesting a role in thermoregulation, possibly allowing the animal to dissipate heat or regulate body temperature by adjusting blood flow. The tail spikes, commonly referred to as the thagomizer, were likely used as a defensive weapon. Unlike the more massive ankylosaurs, stegosaurs had relatively small heads and tiny brains for their body size. They lacked complex chewing mechanics and probably relied on gut fermentation to digest tough plant matter. Their posture was also unique, with long hind limbs and shorter front limbs giving them a sloped back. Ornithopods. Ornithopods were a broad group of herbivorous dinosaurs that evolved from small, agile runners into some of the most successful plant eaters of the Mesozoic. The name Ornithopoda means bird feet, referring to their three-toed, bird-like hind limbs. This group includes early forms like Hypsilophodon, transitional forms like Iguanodon, and more advanced members like the Hadrosaurs, which are technically a subset of ornithopods. Early ornithopods were small, fast bipeds. These dinosaurs had narrow snouts, rows of simple teeth, and long hind limbs adapted for running. As ornithopods evolved, they became larger and more diverse in form. The middle stage forms such as Dryosaurus and Tyrannosaurus were still bipedal but had stronger jaws and more complex dentition. Iguanodon marked a significant evolutionary leap. This large, bulky herbivore could walk on all fours but also rear up on its hind legs. It had a unique thumb spike, likely used for defense or manipulating vegetation. Its jaws housed multiple rows of teeth capable of grinding plant material, and its limbs suggest it was both powerful and versatile in locomotion. Later ornithopods became dominant in late Cretaceous ecosystems. Fossil evidence of nesting colonies, trackways, and group living suggests that many species lived in structured herds, possibly engaging in migratory patterns and cooperative defense strategies. Therizinosaurs. Therizinosaurs were bizarre, herbivorous theropod dinosaurs with long necks, large claws, and a body plan unlike any other in the dinosaur world. They belonged to the clade Therizinosauridae, meaning they were technically closer to birds than to most traditional herbivores. They lived during the Cretaceous period, and fossils have been found in both Asia and North America. These dinosaurs had an unusual mix of features. They had small heads with beak-like mouths, long necks similar to sauropods, bulky torsos, and massive claws, some measuring over 3 feet long. Their teeth were leaf-shaped and adapted for slicing plants, suggesting they were fully herbivorous, or possibly omnivorous. Despite their size and slow-moving appearance, Therizinosaurs were theropods, traditionally meat-eating dinosaurs. This makes them evolutionary anomalies, having transitioned from carnivory to herbivory. One of the largest known members is Therizinosaurus cheloniformis, which may have reached 30 feet in length. It had the longest claws of any known dinosaur and a tall, stiff posture. Fossils with preserved feathers suggest that Therizinosaurs were fully feathered, further supporting their close relationship with birds. Their peculiar combination of traits makes them a prime example of evolutionary experimentation during the Cretaceous. Prosauropods. Prosauropods were early, long-necked, herbivorous dinosaurs that lived during the late Triassic and early Jurassic. They are considered basal members of the sauropodomorph lineage, precursors to the giant sauropods like Diplodocus and Brachiosaurus. While not a formally recognized family anymore, the term prosauropod is still commonly used to describe this transitional group. These dinosaurs typically had elongated necks and tails, relatively small heads, and a semi-erect posture. They could walk on all fours but were likely capable of rearing up or walking bipedally when needed. Their limbs and body plans suggest a mixture of locomotive strategies, which allowed for adaptation to various environments. Most prosauropods had grasping hands and thumbs with large claws, possibly used for feeding or defense. Unlike later sauropods, prosauropods had leaf-shaped teeth arranged in simple rows and lacked the complex air sac system that would later evolve in larger relatives. Some species show adaptations for jaw rotation, which may have helped in cropping vegetation. Fossils of prosauropods have been found on every continent, including Antarctica, indicating their wide distribution in Pangaean ecosystems. Their evolutionary significance lies in their role as a transitional form. They represent the initial experimentation with the body plan that would later be refined and expanded in sauropods. Their evolutionary significance lies in their role as a transitional form. They represent the initial experimentation with the body plan that would later be refined and expanded in sauropods. Spinosaurids. Spinosaurids were a family of semi-aquatic theropod dinosaurs recognized for their elongated crocodile-like snouts, conical teeth, and in some species, large sail-like structures on their backs. They belong to the clade Spinosauridae, which emerged in the early Cretaceous and persisted until the late Cretaceous. The most famous member is Spinosaurus aegyptiacus, one of the largest known theropods, reaching lengths of over 50 feet. Unlike other large carnivores, Spinosaurs had long, narrow jaws filled with straight, conical teeth lacking serrations, an adaptation suited for catching slippery aquatic prey like fish. Their skulls contained pressure-sensitive pits similar to modern crocodiles, possibly helping them detect movement in water. Spinosaurid anatomy was highly specialized. Some species, including Spinosaurus, had elongated neural spines forming a sail or crest, which may have served as a display structure, a thermoregulatory aid, or even an adaptation for swimming. Their arms were longer and more robust than those of most other theropods. Recent fossil interpretations suggest that Spinosaurus had dense bones for buoyancy control and a flattened tail ideal for propulsion in water. This supports the hypothesis that it was the first fully aquatic dinosaur. The evolutionary divergence of Spinosaurids from other theropods represents one of the most dramatic ecological shifts among carnivorous dinosaurs. Allosaurids. Allosaurids were large theropod predators that dominated the Jurassic period. They belonged to the clade Allosauridae, which included apex predators like Allosaurus fragilis, the most well-known species. These dinosaurs predated Tyrannosaurs and filled a similar ecological role during their time, roughly 155 to 145 million years ago. Allosaurids were characterized by large skulls with numerous sharp, serrated teeth and a pair of bony crests above their eyes. They had strong hind limbs for walking and running, a long muscular tail for balance, and large three-fingered arms with powerful claws. They could reach lengths of up to 35 feet and were likely a fast, agile predator capable of tackling large, herbivorous prey like Stegosaurus and young sauropods. Unlike tyrannosaurs, their skulls were relatively lightly built, with wide opening jaws and strong neck muscles, suggesting a hatchet-like biting motion. This would have allowed them to slash into prey repeatedly, rather than rely on a single powerful bite. Allosaurids illustrate the peak of Jurassic predator evolution before the rise of the Tyrannosaurs in the Cretaceous. Marginocephalians. The clade Marginocephalia includes two major dinosaur families, the Ceratopsians and the Pachycephalosaurs. They are grouped together based on a shared anatomical trait, a shelf or ridge of bone on the back of the skull, called the marginal frill. Though the two families differ in form and behavior, this feature links them evolutionarily. Ceratopsians, as covered earlier, were large quadrupedal herbivores with elaborate horns and frills. Pachycephalosaurs were bipedal dinosaurs with thick domed skulls, adapted for display or headbutting. Despite their differences, both groups show evidence of rapid cranial evolution, likely driven by sexual selection, species recognition, and social interaction. Marginocephalians were primarily found in the northern hemisphere during the Cretaceous period, with fossil evidence concentrated in Asia and North America. Both groups developed from earlier, more basal forms with simpler cranial structures. This clade highlights one of the key themes in dinosaur evolution: the use of elaborate cranial ornamentation for social and ecological purposes. Whether for combat, mating, or defense, Marginocephalians developed some of the most visually distinct and behaviorally interesting adaptations of any dinosaur lineage.